have different points of view, and this is seen brilliantly in the set design. Cavalier slouches in a comfy chair, whereas she sits upright in a much more formal one. Basically sums up their whole characters and how he's just doing things on a whim to see if he can. He's cavalier about it, yes. He's created immortality though, and doesn't quite understand the cost that comes with that. Sylvia sees this as a great thing that they must look after and nourish, and that the children need to be cared for. She wants things that are best for them, whereas Cavalier wants something that's gonna be good for him, and his ego. In this scene is a debate about the use of tech for good, as they're building these perfect humans that are indestructible, powerful and smart.
Why?
Is it just because you can, which is sort of something that they discuss with the engineers. We even see in real life how jobs are being sacrificed for the AI arms race, and though it's a market that's printing money now, is it going to come with a much bigger cost later down the line? Will it change humanity for the worse, that sort of thing? In the end, the material conditions for the public aren't improving, so why are they spending billions doing this? He patronizes Sylvia for being book smart, while he wants a deep and philosophical conversation. Sylvia's idea of making her more human than machine is shown later when Wendy's looking at her brother. Kirsch actually calls it a distraction, while Sylvia says it suits her. He's very much a machine who's anti-emotion, while
back to the grind. You know it, Thug Dog.
It actually reminds me a lot of David and Prometheus.
Yo, hang on in there a second, Thug Dog. Check this out, bud.
Robot, but he wanted him to understand humanity through art, philosophy and music. In the end though, Wayland didn't want to advance humanity.
Yo, check this out, right?
Face to face with his maker. We then cut to Wendy. I love how the windows are egg-shaped, and it just builds nicely into the series iconography. Discussing things with slightly, I actually prefer his mate, mostly. They have conversations around death, the fragility of life, and taking a leap of faith. The pair have seen firsthand what diseases can do.
Job market drop right now, yep. Because everything's becoming automated, brother. Pretty soon we'll just have people maintaining the robots, and that's it. So I ordered.
Just scared of things out of their control. Death is the biggest thing when it comes to that.
I ordered, look at that, right?
So it's no longer
3.5 grams 4 times, so that's a half ounce of weed. Look what they sent me. Look what they sent me, bro. This is crazy.
Which is a literal leap of faith rather than a conversation about one. They have to jump across the stairway, you know? What's that saliva dripping down from the ceiling? Yeah, but brought back a lot of memories.
They sent me an ounce of each, bud.
If the saliva's dripping from it, don't go look at it. That's my
an ounce of each. I'm fucking laughing.
Ooh. Anyway,
the job market is insanely hard right now, though. Like, anywhere you go. Best thing is to make your own business. Create your own job.
And he barely survives. Getting a flashback to one day earlier, we see he's rejected by the corporation. Again, it's a bit like Romulus, but allows us to see another part of Wendy's powers. We learn she's capable of rewriting code. He'd made a promise to their dad he'd go back to medical school, and I think this emotional connection is what allows her to do it. So
probably worse in Canada, yeah. You got all these fucking fake Canadians.
Guy wants to go to Mars as well, and it'll take him away from all this pain, and his sister. I do wonder as well how this ability to interface things will extend beyond what we've seen so far. Upon landing, Wendy hears a buzzing sound and ticking that initially sounds like radio static. This then repeats with the eggs, and I'll talk about my theory with that later on. We also see things through her eyes. The crash ship here did remind me a lot of the derelict one that they find on LV-426. It's got that tube TV effect to it, and heavily plays into that VHS style that the original movie had. It also reminds me a lot of the Void Comp test in Blade Runner. Now it's here that they really start to have Wendy displayed similar to Ripley, especially with the cropping.
The world's fucking going downhill quickly, unfortunately.
Watching her brother, which is alongside the Xenomorph.
It's very sad.
Here's watching her, watching him, and thus there's all these characters that are spying on each other. We can also see how green and immature the Lost Boys are. The two look like they're playing with swords while one's making a paper airplane. This idea of flying, that may even tie into Peter Pan. Back with Cavalier, we then get our first proper scene with Yutani. This is done on an analog iPad, which again feels very VHS. Demanding he hands back her property, it makes sense why they didn't get the Xenomorph in the end. Thus, the Nostromo was sent with it being confirmed recently that the company indeed put it near LV-426 on purpose so that it would potentially pick up the signal. Either way, it's at this point the Lost Boys and girls, we're not sexist here, they make it to the ship. It's basically the kids entering the haunted house for Halloween. They're far more confident than the soldiers that preceded them and stroll about with no need for weapons. We also get some foreshadowing of the eggs at the end, as we can see one in a tank. Also, love how we have the shop, which is still playing adverts while it's also completely destroyed. Highlights the world the corporations are trying to build, but it's their inability to control nature that will likely destroy everything. Because life finds a way. Through the cameras in their eyes, we can see on the HUD that they mostly all have the names of the Lost Boys. We mentioned Smee earlier, with one being called Toodles and another named Curly. Nibs is also name checked by Kirsch. Wendy and Slightly then make their way into the building, whereas Kirsch and the others remain on the ship. It's here where they come across the plant that also resembles an egg. Kirsch tells them they're not animals though, so they have absolutely nothing to fear. We'll see though, mate, we'll see with our eyes. But yeah, it does look like it restrains itself when looking at the hybrid. Now, here we have the Venus flytrap thing, and then come across the bugs. These have massive sacks like your granddad, and then we get the eye. This is where I really think they went next level with it, and it was so creepy seeing it coming out the cat. The new monsters reminded me a lot of The Thing, specifically that aliens are using animals to hide themselves. Cats are often also used in horror for jump scares, and you'll normally cut to one to show, look, it's not as bad as you think it is. See, it's a fake out, it's just a cat. But that's not the case here. That is pretty much playing with the tropes though, and even Jonesy was like used that way in Alien, and initially you think everything's okay. And then it looks at you and you see the weird eye thing. This then acts like a face hugger, and my guess is that it latches on, eats your eye, and then from your brain it controls your body. We do later see a file on this nightmare fuel creature.
Yeah, I think it was giving me the fucking heebie-jeebies.
Takes over the pathways to the brain. Now, it appears to be called an ocilius, which is an eye-like marking on an animal that replicates the eye. It's said to be super strong, which is why the Lost Boys were able to stop it from latching on. The way it scuttles across the floor, that also reminded me a lot of the spider head in The Thing. With Wendy, she then discovers her brother's backpack, and we also see the xenomorph drool on the floor. Back with Hermit, we get a lovely statue, that really nice. Hope nothing is hiding in there. Now, I did go back and rewind it, and he definitely wasn't there. It's not your fault, Hermit. Here he's reunited with his pal, and they then try to warn the Renaissance party there's about to be a revolution. Now, the idea of a company town marries well with the look of a high-class French fancy dress party. The man's wearing a powdered wig, which was a symbol of nobility in Europe, particularly in pre-revolutionary France. During the Enlightenment era, we saw the Industrial Revolution then tip society on its head. A revolution of technology rapidly changed the world and brought about new money, which Boy Cavalier essentially represents. The old guard elites were suddenly rubbing shoulders with the mill owners and factory magnates that had basically came into a fortune. Here though, the lad who wants to go to medical school is somewhat an indentured servant. Not allowed social mobility, he must work for the company. All while these rich people party it up and say they know the manager. So we see a merge of the let them eat cake class and the new money rich. But these snobs are about to receive their own reign of terror. It's also reminiscent of Titanic, where they have solitude and no fear of dying in a tragedy, while the lower classes suffer. Revealing itself.
Am I going to enjoy the different strains? Fuck yeah, bud. I smoked the one earlier. I actually ordered an ounce. Of one strain, so that's where they fucked up. They thought it was an ounce of everything, but it was only an ounce of the one strain. The one strain that I ordered an ounce of, I smoked it, and it was like menthol-y and very berry-esque. Pretty decent. Not what I was expecting. I went and contacted them, and I was just like, yo, look, you guys fucked up and sent me way too much bud, and I sent them a picture, and they're like, yo, thanks for being honest and shit, because you're honest and we didn't find out the other way, you can just keep it. And I'm like, no fucking way, bro, you're kidding me, right? And they're like, no, you can just keep it, man. I'm just like, yeah, honesty paying off.
The culmination of the blood test in The Thing, tearing up the party, your brain...
What kind of job are you looking for, Thug Duck?
Kind of does the work as you hear the screams and then see the shadows on the ceiling. And then everything goes quiet. Hermit ends up grabbing the rifle, and we can see this as a green laser pointer. This is just like Alien Covenant, where the team had similar sights. Inside, he sees it's basically like an impressionist painting, with everyone completely ripped apart. They're all getting legless. Nah, it's weird, bad seeing him crawl across the floor. Up on the staircase as well, you can also see the creature running past. Leaping from the balcony and using its tail to trip up CJ, it closes in for the kill. Like an alien isolation death scene. Morrow is here though, and he electrocutes the creature before also doing the same thing to Hermit. Taking the beast in, he seems pretty loyal to the company. Like, loyal mate.
Yo, they
Oh
did say
god,
they were
they
gonna
told
have
me
to
I had to
talk to
wait
someone
5
there, and I
minutes
was just
past
like, fuck, I
closing
feel
time.
bad for that guy. He
Fuck off,
just
I'm
got his
gone,
hand
I'm quick.
chopped off by
Daisy
some
Duke beast
Vietnamese
here is
dude.
massive though, and it looks big enough to take down an elephant. The insect themes are then further played into as the webbing
That
carries
man
over.
just got his fucking
So,
hand
wrapping up,
chopped.
spiders were also the basis for the alien queen, along with ants to them living in hives with a queen at the center. It also looks kind of similar to the cocoons that the humans are kept in throughout the franchise. Morrow clearly
I'm
knows
trying to think here. What did I need? The rake.
a lot more about the xenomorph, and Whaley Utani maybe even reverse engineered these cocoons. When the Ripley clone was born in Resurrection, she also came out in something similar. Back on the ship, we see as Kirsch integrates with the Magnotti
Probably
and
some.
downloads the data. The way he does this is also very similar to Cyberpunk 2077. Now on this, we also get lots of graphics.
500 a month, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I make more on YouTube than
We
that.
saw as they entered
And I just sit here and
Back
stream
with
for a few
Morrow,
hours
we
every
witness how
day.
it won't attack if you remain calm and still. It reminded me a lot of
That's
Golic in
fucked.
Alien 3, who wasn't attacked by
500. That's fucked, dude. 500 a month for that? Dude, that's fucked, dude. That's fucked, bro. I feel so bad for you. That's crazy. Dude, I feel so bad. That's crazy, bro. 500 a month? That's like an actual, like, that, like, what? That's fucked, dude. Probably something in the airline industry flight. You know what you should do is you should open up like a tourist attraction or something. No students means no money. That's fair. That's fair. You should open up like a tourist attraction and fly people around like and well, I guess you'd have to invest in a plane then. You know what I mean? If you were to do that, you'd have to invest into a plane. Take people for flights and shit. Yeah, that'd be gas.
the creature either. Because of this, he began to worship it and even went to see it for himself. I don't know what Morrow's plan was taking it away like this, because woke up like 2 minutes later, but yeah, I think the guy, you just need to kill it, mate. Like, you've just got to kill it at this point. This idea of being unafraid is also something that we see with the plant now. And the guy even steps forward, which is when it flinches. So, these creatures can be intimidated. The plant is also reminiscent of Bjorn's death in Alien Romulus when the tentacle comes out. It's at this point Kirsch sees the eggs and some blood drips down on his Slightly's face. This is also something that happened with Golic, and there it was sort
Andy,
of
what's up, dude?
With him, we then see as he discovers
Andy, Bo Bandy, Fo Shandy, my Mandy. What's up?
He had an incredible run in the World Series. Everyone was celebrating, and kids were drinking their dad's beer. Yay! You also see what looks like a Phillies jacket on the wall. Might be, I don't know, I'm British, we prefer cricket, and I don't even watch that shit either. It's here that he's reunited with his sister though, and remembers when the pair watched that game together. The reason he goes back to these
iPhone 13? Holy shit, dude.
to see the world
That's crazy.
A moment to shine. This is basically what the crash is going to be for the family, and the world.
How's the camera on it? I bet you it's insane.
These aliens, just kill them. Wendy doesn't reveal that she's a sister here though, and instead the conversation moves to how the blood isn't Slightly's, as they're all white on the inside. We've seen throughout the franchise that synthetics all have milk-like liquid inside of them, and Ash actually drank milk in Alien potentially to top this up. There's definitely the sense that Wendy wants to tell him, and in Peter Pan, she was of course united with her brothers. Now he's grown up, and they look around the same age, and we see how jarring this is.
For free, your sister gave it to you. Yo, what a nice sister. Shit.
Might not even really accept that this is his sister. Though he does seem to do that, you know, he questions repeatedly to see if it's really her, and I think that doubt might start to creep in through the season. You might just accept it though, but these scenes are clearly about what happened and the boy genius that she idolizes. It all works really well on the human level, and yeah, it was a great moment that, though I'm saying like, I hope he doesn't remember, you know, I actually do hope that they get to be happy. Again, this reminds me of Invincible a lot though, as Rexplode was sold off and turned into a weapon, much like what happened with Wendy. Wendy's father sent her off, and I do wonder if one, if he was paid off heavily by the company, and two, if a possible terminal illness was actually exacerbated. Making their way through the ship, it's here they then come across the cargo.
In the same room, yeah, I just moved my setup. It used to be up against the wall behind me. I just moved it to the other wall. Put my bed behind me. I have a little bit more room to like do stuff in my room now.
The toys are not yours. The toys are not to be played with. The blue beam is then reused from the original film, and there it was supposed to be a warning. This is why it reacted when being broken. They even used the same sound effect.
There's a layer of mist just covering the eggs that reacts when broken.
Now as when he gets closer, that static seems to come from the eggs or either the xenomorph. Again, I'm not sure exactly what this is, but she can either tap into the creature or part of the ship's system. I think it's more likely the latter because I don't really get how the former would work. However, they do work as a hive mind, and she may be picking up on all the signals that come from that. Who knows how it works? Hermit then does the classic thing you want to do when you get close to an alien egg.
In the name of science, I will put my face in it.
Luckily, the xenomorph arrives and runs off with him before it kicks off. I'm guessing he's taking him to put him on a wall so that more xenomorphs can be made. We also get a bit against the background that looks like rear projection. I don't know if it's the effects that were bad on purpose there, but I actually quite like it. Aliens was full of rear projection and the ship crash heavily used that effect. So it just looked like a little nod to that. Either way, she's off to go look for her brother, and we see Slightly's left slightly in danger. We close out with Stinkfist by Tool playing, and the song is certainly a choice considering what it's about, and I'm sure you can figure that out. The deeper meaning though, no pun intended on deeper there, that's about how people will go to the extremes to feel something, be it drugs, alcohol, or even a stink fist. Eventually it basically says that we become numb to stimuli and require more and more extreme things. The heavy, progressive rock feels almost industrial at times, and it fits in with the stripped back analog look of the show. Now that wraps up the breakdown, and if you've seen my review...
Fucking good show, man. I was skeptical, but it's a goodie. Well, am I playing some zombies? Well, I'm heading out of town this week for a week, and then when I get back, I will be definitely playing. Probably my first stream back, I will game some Zams. First week back, I'll probably game some Zams. 5, more than likely, yeah. More than likely, my man.
The video you are watching was recorded on a GoPro camera operated by 20-year-old Riley Horn.
Call 911.
What's going on?
Call 911 now.
I'm calling. What's going on?
Just call 911.
Okay, I'm calling.
I need a police officer, EMS.
What do you mean?
Riley just discovered his father, 62-year-old retired FBI agent Scott Horn, dead outside of his father's home. A nearby police cruiser was quick to arrive at the scene. Riley struggled to keep his composure as he spoke to the officer.
My father is under a bunch.
What is that?
It's a GoPro.
Once backup had arrived, they followed Riley as he led them to his father's body.
Right here. I can't look. He's covered.
The officers took a closer look and saw no signs of life, and his upper body was brutally disfigured and covered in blood. It was immediately apparent that Scott was murdered.
I want you, listen to me. I want you out front on the porch. Have a seat. Have a seat. You got crime scene tape? Where's the body? We got a couple more units here. Gonna have a potential crime scene.
The EMT.
Bro, I know his dad just got murdered, but that scream was pretty funny.
Scott Horn deceased. With a homicide on their hands, the officers decided to reconvene on the front porch to figure out a game plan.
Can you all contact Kezzy?
Detective Kezzy Henderson was called to the scene to lead the homicide investigation. Upon his arrival, he was informed that just 8 hours earlier, officers were dispatched to the same residence to do a welfare check on Scott.
Nice house. His name's Scott, right?
Yeah.
At this point, Scott hadn't been heard from all day. Unsure of how to locate him, his daughter Kelly called the police to express her concerns. As the officers waited for somebody to answer the door, they could hear Scott's 2 dogs barking from inside the house. Eventually, Kelly opened the door and let the officers inside.
No police.
Old Police Department!
She said that this behavior was completely out of the ordinary for her dad, who had an extremely disciplined routine. The officers asked if they could take a look in Scott's room, but unfortunately, he kept his room padlocked, so they moved on to the rest of the house. While one of the officers checked the rooms upstairs, Kelly led another officer to check the basement, but neither had any luck. Kelly decided that she was going to ask around the neighborhood if anybody had heard from her dad.
I'm gonna take my
Do you want to report him missing or?
I guess we'll wait till later.
Okay.
Although Kelly didn't want to report Scott missing just yet, the officers couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Kelly grabbed her dad's dogs and went on her way. The officers exited behind her and headed back to the station. Kelly's search was proving to be unsuccessful, so she called her brother Riley and explained the situation to him. Riley, who was with his friend at the time, decided to take action. He and his friend strapped up, attaching GoPros to their foreheads. They then went straight to the house and began their hunt. As they scoured the property, they suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the side of the house. They slowly headed toward the noise, but they struggled to see anything in the darkness. Once they got closer, they spotted a tarp on the ground. They lifted it up and found Scott's body, bloody and mangled. As you saw earlier, Riley then bolted back to the neighbor's house and told his sister to call 911.
Call 911.
What's going on?
Now that Detective Henderson understood the events that led up to Scott's discovery, he had some more questions for Riley. He first asked if anybody else was inside the home. Riley said that his mother, 62-year-old Ann Reed Allen, was likely upstairs in her bedroom and had been there the entire time. Detective Henderson found it strange that Ann didn't step outside with all of the commotion going on. He instructed a group of officers to go inside to make contact with her.
Hello? Well, Police Department? Can you come down here, ma'am?
What?
Clearly, Anne had some trouble walking as she slowly hobbled down the stairs with a crutch in her hand.
Who else lives here? Anyone else?
My husband.
Your husband?
Apparently, Anne had no idea that her husband was even missing. Since she was having a hard time on her feet, she and the officers moved to the kitchen so she could sit down.
What's going on?
Well, we're conducting an investigation right now, ma'am.
For what?
Before hitting her with the news that Scott was in fact dead, they wanted to evaluate her behavior. If you take a close look at her facial expressions, Anne initially seemed annoyed by the officers, but within moments, her demeanor shifts to completely carefree. Nonetheless, the officers were still uncertain if Anne was somehow involved in Scott's death. So once Detective
Bro,
Henderson
they just give
arrived,
40
he
XP
strategically
each.
how
What
he
the hell?
questioned her.
Ma'am, Detective Henderson?
Where is Scott at?
The last I saw Scott was early this morning.
Anne said that she and Scott rarely saw each other unless they were discussing the terms of their upcoming divorce.
I hardly ever see him. He's gone most of the day, every day. He doesn't talk to me. I mean, he won't tell me anything. I don't know what else to tell you.
Have you been outside?
I was outside to put wood on the fire, but that was it.
And you didn't see Scott out there?
No.
In order to put wood on the fire, Anne had to access the wood fire stove that is located in the shed. Scott's body was directly in front of the shed doors. In other words, Anne must have been right beside Scott's body while putting wood on the fire. The fact that she supposedly hadn't seen anything immediately set off red flags for the detective.
There's a man deceased in the yard. Okay?
Is a deceased man in my yard?
I haven't.
The detective broke the news that the deceased man was Scott, but Anne showed little emotion. Instead, she immediately began listing reasons why somebody might have wanted to harm him.
I know he gambles all the time.
She said that Scott was at the casino the night before. Perhaps he had outplayed someone and took their money, and that bitter loser exacted their revenge on him. Several other theories were thrown around as well. For example, maybe a criminal that Scott had locked up during his FBI days had come back, hell-bent on getting even. Scott also owned multiple rental properties and had recently evicted several of his tenants.
And he's got a lot of people that are angry.
Although Detective Henderson took these theories seriously, he also took everything Anne said with a grain of salt. He left her with one final warning.
Listen, if you know anything about that, then you need
All
to be
I
honest.
know is that
At this point, Anne wasn't providing any more useful information, so Detective Henderson went back outside to catch up with the forensics team, and they had some interesting observations to share. Scott's wallet and phone were missing, potentially pointing to a robbery turned deadly. However, in most cases, robbers will flee the scene as quickly as possible. Since the killer had taken the time to cover up Scott's body, the investigators wondered if this attack was something more personal. They were able to find more evidence to support this theory. According to the medical examiner, Scott was shot in the neck from behind. This injury was likely caused by a bullet that was found lodged in the shed. However, it was ultimately determined that this gunshot only would have incapacitated Scott, and the subsequent beating is actually what caused his death. They believed that this beating was done with a piece of firewood, indicated by the several wood chips found on Scott's body, but they were unable to find the piece of wood that was used. The investigators had a feeling that the killer had thrown it into the wood fire stove.
I was
The
gonna
fact
say,
that
wouldn't it be
Scott's
like the
assailant
perfect
was shot
way to
in the
just
neck,
throw it in the wood,
realized that
like
he
the
wasn't
stove
dead,
that
and
she was like
proceeded to
feeding?
finish the job in a brutal manner,
Like what?
suggested that this was an emotional killing. Although the detectives had their suspicions about Anne, everybody was still a suspect at this point. That includes the person who found Scott's body, Riley. They asked Riley to come down to the station for an interview. He enthusiastically agreed. He said that after a long day at work, he was hanging out with his friend when Kelly called him to help find their dad. He told the detective about the noises he heard near the shed, and said that he caught a glimpse of a mysterious figure leaving that area.
Did you actually see who it was, or?
I did not. It was just all shadow.
Okay, some figures.
Yes.
Riley was convinced that this figure was Anne. He told the detective about his relationship with his mother. Apparently, Anne had strict rules while he and Kelly were growing up, and breaking those rules resulted in heavy-handed punishments. One time, Scott tried to stand up for Kelly after Anne forced her to sleep in the hallway, and Anne pulled a gun on him. This incident didn't escalate any further, but over the years, the fighting only continued. About 30 cases involving domestic abuse or assault were opened, but none of them resulted in a conviction.
Fucking leave her at
Riley
that
eventually
point. Like, what the
moved out
fuck is
once
this guy
they were
doing?
old enough, while Scott and Anne continued to live together. They installed multiple locks on their bedroom doors to keep each other out. Riley became so afraid of his mother that he would wear a GoPro camera strapped to his head to document any interactions with her. All of this information strengthened the case against Anne, but her toxic behavior and alleged abuse weren't enough to charge her with Scott's murder. The detectives needed to collect more evidence and rule out any other possibilities. While officers canvassed the area around the crime scene, Detective Henderson drove to the live casino and hotel in Hanover to do 3 things. Verify the information that Anne had provided, establish Scott's timeline leading up to the murder, and investigate the theory that someone from the casino had killed him. After gaining access to the casino's security footage, the detective confirmed that Scott was there the night before, just as Anne stated. He spent a lot of his time gambling in the casino pit playing poker. There appeared to be no animosity amongst the players. After winning some money, Scott decided to collect his payout. It was clear that Scott wasn't exactly a high roller. His earnings for the night amounted to less than $100. It seemed unlikely that he would be killed over that much money. After collecting his cash, he took the elevator down to the parking garage, headed to his car, and left for the night. As far as Detective Henderson could tell, nobody had followed him. After viewing this footage, the investigators were confident in ruling out this killer from the casino theory. Although this lead was a dead end, officers had better luck while canvassing the neighborhood. Apparently, Anne was constantly spreading rumors about Scott. On one occasion, Anne had told the neighbors that Scott and his kids were abusing her.
I left because I was not going to be beaten up by him.
You know, I have a really hard time believing that happened.
I know, because you're stupid. And you don't know how deceptive an FBI agent can be.
Anne also reached out to their next-door neighbors, Cindy and Marty, and made several accusations against Scott. She once left this voicemail, giving them a friendly reminder about Scott's promiscuous past.
This is Ann Allen. I just wanted to give you a quick call. He's brutal. And because he ran the streets, until I married him at age 37, he was nothing but a man.
Apparently, Anne was doing this because Scott had been telling the neighbors about how horrible a wife and mother she was. Anne was just trying to set the record straight by speaking with the neighbors herself. According to Anne, the reality was that Kelly had violent tendencies, which were enabled by Scott's passive parenting style. Whenever Anne would try to do something about Kelly's behavior, she would somehow be painted as the bad guy. However, nobody seemed to believe the things that Anne was saying about her family. Cindy also showed the detectives a photo she had taken on the day that Scott's body was discovered. A slender man could be seen walking away from their property. Unfortunately, the photo was too blurry to make out any other details. Cindy had a strong feeling that this was Jason Bird, who the neighbors believed was Anne's not-so-secret lover. Based on the photo, nobody could confirm whether it was actually Jason or not. Luckily, the detectives were able to obtain this choppy video that another neighbor recorded on the day that Scott's body was discovered. In the video, Jason's truck can be seen in Scott and Anne's driveway. Now that Jason was confirmed to have been there, the detectives believed that he had helped Anne cover up the murder, taking Scott's wallet and phone and possibly getting rid of the gun used to shoot him. A few days after Scott's death, his celebration of life took place. Many of Scott's colleagues spoke at length about how friendly he was and the positive impact that he had on their lives.
Nobody could make Scott laugh more than Scott could make Scott laugh.
Riley, Kelly, and Anne sat in the front row, and many of the attendees came up to them to give their condolences. But Anne wasn't getting any sympathy from law enforcement, as they continued to find more evidence that she was responsible for his death. While searching the home, they found wood chips inside the washing machine. The crime lab tested these wood chips and found Scott's DNA all over them. This discovery implied that Anne had put something in the washing machine, potentially her own clothes, that had wood chips on them from attacking Scott. With a divorce right around the corner, the detectives wanted to know why
Gotcha,
he would
bitch.
choose to harm Scott instead of just waiting for the divorce to settle. They discovered that Scott had a $500,000 life insurance policy. He also had those rental properties that we mentioned earlier. The detectives
coming in?
believed that Anne had killed Scott, hoping to collect the money from his life insurance policy
What's
and
up?
the rest of his assets. On June 30th, 2017, several officers went to the hotel that Anne was staying in to execute an arrest warrant.
Police, open door. All right. Put your hands behind your back. We have an arrest warrant for you.
Anne was thrown behind bars and charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and the use of a handgun during a crime of violence.
Estranged wife of a retired FBI agent is charged with murder. Police in Laurel have charged 62-year-old Ann Allen with first and second-degree murder in the shooting of 62-year-old Scott Horn.
Anne was held without bond at the Prince George's County Correctional Facility. On July 10th, 2017, Jason was also arrested and received the same charges.
A second person has been arrested and charged in the death of a retired FBI special agent who was killed back in March. Laurel police arrested 42-year-old Jason Allen Bird of Westminster Monday in connection to the death of Scott
It looks like
Horner.
the white James Harden.
The 2-year-old was found in the backyard of a home on Patuxent Road. Bird now faces several charges, including first-degree murder.
The police finally had their 2 prime suspects in custody. However, this was short-lived, because after executing search warrants for Jason's home and car, they found nothing linking him to the crime. While presenting their case to the grand jury, there wasn't enough evidence to take Jason to trial, so the charges against him were ultimately dropped, and Jason was let go. The case against Jason didn't pan out, but they had plenty of evidence to convict Anne, right? Well, the prosecution was not allowed to tell the jury about many of the things we have discussed in this video. This includes Kelly and Riley's stories of living with their mother, the recordings of Anne spreading rumors about Scott, and even the several cases of domestic abuse that were filed over the years. None of this was admissible in court. According to Maryland law, using prior bad acts to prove things like motive, opportunity, or intent is admissible in court, but using prior bad acts to prove the character of a person is not admissible in court. Even with these crippling limitations, the authorities followed through with their prosecution. In November of 2018, Anne's trial took place. The prosecution alleged that Anne had waited for Scott to return home from the casino before carrying out the deadly assault, motivated by a desire to profit from his life insurance policy and gain control over their marital assets. They knew the defense would highlight Anne's walking disability and try to say that she was incapable of killing Scott. So the prosecution showed the jury some interesting recordings from Cindy and Marty's home security camera. In most of the clips, Anne can be seen hobbling around on her crutch, but several other times, Anne can be seen walking around without a crutch, completely unfazed. The prosecution argued that Anne wasn't the frail old lady that she portrayed herself as, and she was completely capable of killing Scott. After a grueling legal battle, it was time for the jury to deliberate. By the end of the first day, the jury was deadlocked. The judge ordered them to continue deliberating, and on day 2, they had a verdict. Anne was found not guilty and was acquitted of all charges. She immediately began sobbing and thanked God over and over again. Just as Anne's defense had predicted, most of the prosecution's claims were completely dismantled by the defense during the trial. In a statement leading up to the trial, Anne's defense attorney Andrew Jezik said, "I think the bottom line is that this is a very circumstantial case. There is no smoking gun. There's no confession. There's no text or email that is incriminating whatsoever. There's no DNA. There's no blood. There's no fingerprints." And he was right. Based on the evidence presented in the trial, there was nothing that directly linked Anne to the crimes that she was accused of. The defense also found the idea of Anne killing Scott for money ludicrous. Anne wasn't even the beneficiary for Scott's life insurance money because Scott had taken her off of his policy. It also turns out that Scott had $220,000 in debt that Anne was now responsible for since they were still married. A financial expert for the defense said that if Scott was still alive and the divorce was finalized, Anne would have been around $500,000 richer. As for Anne not seeing Scott's body when she put wood on the fire, the defense had a simple explanation for this as well. It was too dark. They said that this was clear based on Riley's GoPro footage from that night. The defense claimed that the investigators had tunnel vision on Anne since they had been called to the residence so many times for criminal charges and protective orders. Due to double jeopardy rules, the state was not allowed to charge Anne with murder for a second time. However, Anne was charged with 2 felony counts of attempting to influence state witnesses and 1 felony count of obstruction of justice. Allegedly, she tried to convince her kids not to testify against her. Court documents state that Anne made a jailhouse phone call to someone and told them the kids have to be persuaded. And it's important for them not to participate. Tell them that they don't want to participate. The status of these charges is unclear at the time of this video, but if convicted, Anne could face up to 45 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. As for the kids, Riley followed his passion for technology and is now the lead systems engineer for a data center company, while Kelly works as a veterinary surgical technician, carrying on her dad's love.
Yeah, getting the quest done. I just use that as like a fucking placeholder, bro.
Papa Bear.
Moonlight moth. Yeah, they're prayer pots essentially. Was moonlight moth? So if I take one of these moths, it gives me 22 prayer. It gives me the ability to use all of these. Sub squirt.
$120 bang on 2 height. I missed all my shots on Caustic.
Weak. Caustic's very weak. Oh, yeah.
Yo, you got routed. No, I'm not playing this game. No. That is not real. Like what?
I legit had first shot off on the Caustic and he still just he just three burst me with the RE45.
So let's just say that this is you down here at the bottom, and
That's hilarious. See you for the next half hour and click me up some Moonlight Mothers. You guys watch the new Alien Earth TV show? It's actually really good. I highly suggest watching it. Ooh. Alright guys, I'm gonna bounce. Cheers, Slug. You have a good one. Squirt. Peace out, boys.